You heard people screaming.
There was fire.
I actually thought that the plane had exploded in midair.
Oh my God. Ooh.
I could see flames coming out of the plane itself.
I saw people torn apart.
People started running out, burns, scars, flesh hanging.
It was not a nosedive, it was a belly flop.
You feel for the people, the passengers.
Get a little choked up when I really start thinking about it.
Whole families were killed in that.
Miss Brown, I went to her daughter's funeral. You hear about a couple who got married that day. Miss Bates, it was her first flight, and she was scared to fly.
I don't understand why I survived and so many died.
She kept telling me we're okay, and I'm like, what happened? She said the plane crashed. She said it crashed.
My brother and my dad were in the trauma unit to see me sometime around 1:30 a.m. And I remember opening my eyes and seeing them, and just the look on their faces. I knew that my mom and Christopher did not survive.
I was in a coma for 8 days, and when I woke up, the first thing I heard was this kind of is the hard part. We buried your wife. We buried your wife yesterday.
I'm sorry. Can we? It's been 25 years.
It seems far away in time, but it seems like yesterday.
Hello, I'm Jason Sturkey, and I'm a survivor of USAir Flight 1016.
I'm Paul Calvo. I'm born and raised in Columbia. I'm a survivor.
My name is Cheryl Robinson. I was the passenger on USAir Flight 1016, July 2nd, 1994. Myself and my daughter, Denise.
I'm Larry Sprinkle, NBC Charlotte.
My name is Gregory Fife, and I was the investigator in charge of that accident investigation for the National Transportation Safety Board.
It was a hot, sunny day. Well, it was a hot day.
It was summertime, hot.
When we were cruising at altitude, it was clear blue sky.
All of a sudden, you see it's raining and it's dark.
Everyone noticed the blue sky was replaced with darkness.
Tremendous amount of rain, winds that could be over 100 miles an hour.
Pilots got lulled into a situation where, because they could see the airport, they really didn't factor in the severity of the weather. The air traffic controllers didn't really see what the crew was seeing on the airplane. And because of that lack of information, that may have been the difference in getting the crew to abort the landing sooner rather than later.
If you're an airplane, you can't get out of it. If you're at a low enough altitude, you're not going to be able to climb out of that. And that's the problem that the plane had that day, the airliner had that day. They just could not react to the tremendous amount of force from that downburst of high wind.
It was like being inside of a basketball being dumped, dunked. It was that quick.
The first officer was the flying pilot. The captain was monitoring and basically coaching the first officer. As soon as they lost sight of the airport, The captain decided that they needed to go around, get out of that environment. Unfortunately, they were already into it, and because of the microburst, it was pushing them down towards the ground. So no matter what actions that they took, unfortunately, the airplane, because of their low altitude, struck the ground during that missed approach.
I equate it to being on a roller coaster where you're at the very top and all of a sudden the bottom drops out from under you and you can feel your stomach rise and you know that you're free falling.
It was like I was sleepy all of a sudden.
There was one heavy jolt that threw me forward and backwards. And then within another split second, there was a much larger, extreme, most violent jolt that you can imagine that threw me forward again. I now know that's when the plane had struck the ground.
When it hit the road, it exploded.
The back end of the airplane took the brunt of the initial impact, and then as the airplane skidded through the fence and then into the large trees in the house, then the front end and the middle of the aircraft was exposed as the aircraft broke apart.
When it started killing people, it strafed the big oaks in the front of the yard.
And I kept smelling all this like smoke and fire. And then the next thing I remember, I'm on the ground and I'm sitting here and I can't open my eyes.
I was soaked in jet fuel.
I said to myself, I can remember, oh gosh, we're gonna die burning up.
I couldn't hardly breathe. I mean, I now know I had collapsed lungs and that was why I couldn't breathe.
And it hit me here. You can see where it tore this thumb almost off. We were together for 30 years, 2 children. It's rather hard to lose somebody like that. Suddenly, they told me she was impaled in her chest and died pretty much instantly.
My mom was on the aisle seat, I was in the middle, and then my nephew Christopher was to the right. I was the last one pulled out because it took them, approximately an hour and 15 minutes is what they tell me to extricate me from the debris.
I asked myself, why me live and everybody else in front of me died?
My family apparently stayed in their seats. And if I had not became separated from my seat, I would have most likely suffered the same fate.
I just wasn't meant to die that day.
I did go into cardiac arrest right on the operating table, almost the moment they got me there. And, I credit being here today to those firefighters who worked tirelessly to get me there when they did, because even 30 seconds later, if that had happened and I had not been on the operating table, they wouldn't have had the tools to revive me.
I'm 26 years old right now, and on July 2nd, 1994, I was on a plane crash with my mother.
The NTSB at the time, they didn't know why she survived. I was sitting by the window and she was in the middle, just like you do upon any descent. The pilot comes on and tells everyone to buckle their seatbelt. And she was laying down right when the pilot made that announcement. But after that, she wasn't there anymore. And it was like a dream state, and she was under the seat. And I didn't know why she was under the seat of the plane. In front of me, I'm like, she was buckled in. And I went to grab her. I remember the grab. I remember grabbing her. And I remember pulling her leg. And I didn't understand why I was doing that. I don't remember the impact. I just remember everything was dark and I couldn't see. I kept hearing her cry, and I kept hearing her cry. And I couldn't see her. I couldn't see her. And I heard this lady, she kept telling me, she said, she's right here, she's right here, she's right here. And she put her in my lap. She put her in my lap. I just held on to her hand and to my baby. I said, please don't take her. Please don't take her.
I don't remember anything.
The worst injury she acquired physically was a broken leg. There were a lot of other children that perished on that plane.
I hope I don't start crying when I tell you this, but my nephew, Christopher, he was only 5. And this is a testament to raising kids in church, hallelujah. As we were cruising at altitude, before we knew anything was wrong, we were just up above the clouds. Christopher, at 5 years old, we were up above the clouds looking down at a layer of clouds. And he looked over at me and said, Uncle Jason, he said, isn't this where Jesus lives? Meaning up above, because you always say he lives in the clouds in heaven. And I said, yes, Christopher, this is where Jesus lives. And the next words out of his mouth were, why can't I see Jesus? I mean, to know that was on his mind just minutes before.
The fortunate thing is there were so many survivors, including the crew, so we got some good information. From a survivability standpoint, we learned lessons about the seating, of course about seat belts, and then how the airplane came apart to increase or enhance survivability in future aircraft. Because Charlotte Tower did not have all the latest and greatest Doppler weather radar, Congress forced the FAA to expedite the installation of that type of weather information into each of the control towers so that we wouldn't have another accident like this again.
It took a toll on our family. My only son committed suicide. He was depression.
That was probably one of the contributing factors to a rocky part in my previous marriage. Yes, survivor's guilt is real. You look at life a lot different through great therapists. Yes, I've had an opportunity to rebuild my life and keep going forward, and I thank him for that.
Life went on. Yeah, I'm grateful for my mother.
You have a short window, just use it wisely.
It's always on your mind, you never forget it. It doesn't mean you live trapped by it. It doesn't enslave you, but it is always there.
And I'm not always thinking about that airline crash, but I am thinking about the fact that it only takes one time for you to come that close to not having it.
I'm just so thankful that they gave me another chance to live my life correct.
Yeah, I do actually think about it, probably more frequently than she does.
It is always there. It's something I think about personally. I think about it every day. Matter of fact, it's the default setting in my brain whenever my mind goes idle.
I feel like there's always something in the back of my mind saying, Denise, you've got to do something great. You've got to do something great. My mom's always told me there's a reason I survived and there's a purpose for me. And so in all of my years, I've just kind of lived life trying to, I guess, figure out what that purpose is.
I've been blessed to watch her grow and turn into the woman she has turned into. She's got a tenacious spirit about her.
If you ever have a good spouse, you hang on to them. Give them a hug for me.
whole courses of lives altered because of, you know, one single incident, one single choice, either to take the trip, or to sit where you sat, or to operate the plane in the manner it was operated. Every little detail, you know, there were so many lives lost, and that's the hardest thing to talk about in general.